Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. Sitting here with a trusty, it's a Sennheiser 441. So quite a fun mic. Makes me feel like I'm in some Star Trek episode. There's very few things, I think, these days that are considered to be standards. When I grew up, the standards were, and we all know what they were NS10s, remember NS10s? They were SM57s, which I think have still survived. A 57 is still pretty much a studio standard dynamic microphone, and many other such things. These days, all those doors have been kind of kicked down. However, there is a reverb that everybody loves, a hardware reverb that's in pretty much every major mixer's rack, and that is, of course, the Bricasti. Now, the Bricasti, I believe it's called the M7, is an absolutely incredible reverb. I can think of 4 or 5 of my close friends that use it every single day. Now, this is not a new product, but it's a product that I'm very excited to talk about and basically try out, and that, of course, is LiquidSonics' 7th Heaven. What I like about it is an emulation of Bricasti. This is the light version, if you like. They just call it the 7th Heaven Reverb. They do a pro version, which is more expanded, which I believe has hundreds of presets and all kinds of fun stuff. But at $69 or £54, 22 pence, I think, at that price, it seems like an incredible way to get into a plugin that gives you some of the best reverb sounds on the market. So let's test it out and make sure that that little statement I made there is actually true. So the good folks at LiquidSonics have given us 5 of these wonderful plugins to give away. So you know what to do. If you look down below, there is a link to click on to win one of 5 of these plugins. I've got one of the multi-tracks from the Academy. You can actually download it below. I put up a rough mix, and when I say rough mix, I mean rough mix. If you can see this, it has almost no plugins. I put like 2 or 3 plugins on the whole mix. This is the roughest of roughs. But I wanted to see if we could beat some of the decisions that I actually printed. So for instance, this vocal.
Put some good shoes on and throw away your watch. All that time you lost trying to wind it back.
What I did is I printed a lot of different multi-effects, which is typical for me. I've got a distorted Echoplex here.
Put some good shoes on and
That's a pretty standard thing for me to do. I've got the H3000 pitch changing. I've also got a version I did here with a digital plugin that you can see as well. But here's the fun things. So when I originally mixed this track through my SSL console, I printed the vocal through multi-effects. And one of those, of course, was the Lexicon PCM90. So these are 2 presets from that.
put some good shoes on.
It's called the Echo Plate. And this is the Vocal Magic setting. These are both presets that are both absolutely phenomenal.
Put some good shoes on and throw away your watch. All that time you lost.
So I've got a kind of a feel for what I want to beat. Here's the track. Again, this is like the roughest of rough mixes, which is kind of what I wanted to do because I want to create some space so I can actually hear what the reverb does.
Put some good shoes on and throw away your watch. All that time you lost trying to wind it back.
So there's a few opportunities there. We don't have any reverb on the snare, for instance. We have room mics. That is Blair Sinter playing drums. It was recorded in his room. So it's a small room and it has a pair of room mics. Here are the room mics. They're crushed to make that room feel bigger than it is. Put all the drums in together. Take out those room mics. Here's the snare top and the snare bottom, but I want to use the snare sample because the thing about it is it will be super, super clean. We all know the legendary Andy Wallace's trick, which is to take a snare sample and feed that to the reverb as opposed to the live snare. And the reason why he does that, even if he doesn't even use the snare sample in the mix, is it just gives you a cleaner, more controlled reverb because you don't have hi-hat bleed or any other things bleeding into it. Plus, you'll have a more even hit. Let's take this snare here. So here it is, 7th Heaven. Okay, vocal chamber, we don't want that yet. We're starting off. Let's have a quick look. So halls, plates, rooms, spaces, rooms. Studio A. So let's see what that sounds like. That's interesting. My old room that I recorded so many drums in, like the Aerosmith album, the Frey album, tons of other stuff, was about 3/4 of a second. This default is 0.7, so it's basically something I'm very familiar with. So as you can see, the plugin is ridiculously easy to use. Mix control, presets here, gain control, pre-delay, meaning when does the reverb start? And pre-delay itself is really useful for placing something in a room. If you want something to be a little bit more forward and you don't want to flam, you bring that pre-delay down really, really low. Sometimes take it off entirely. The delay itself here is going to be interesting. Let's see what that sounds like. Nice. Okay, that could be fun. And then, of course, a low cut and a high cut. Super, super important to me because I hate low-end build-up, particularly in drum room mics. So if we wanted to take like those room mics, which I think I'm going to do, and then put the seventh heaven on it, that could be really cool. Then you've got early and late reflections here. I mean, essentially, you've got everything you would expect. Okay, so I'm now adjusting the length of it. That's nice. Bring up the gain. So I've turned off the room mics. Let's turn off the snare verb and let's just hear how the drums sound. Bring it in. Now, I've got a little grace note there you probably heard, so I'm just going to make sure I get that as well. So we're going to drag that down so that the grace note is also getting a bit of verb on it. Take it off. Back on. Superb. Okay, so there it is on a snare. It matches the sound of the room. I went slightly longer than what I would normally do, about 3/4 of a second. I went to 0.85. Great. Now, I'm very tempted to take these room mics and actually use them going through the reverb. What I'm going to do is do something unusual for me, which is I'm going to send them both out stereo. I'm actually going to feed it into it. So this is not something I normally do, but heck, why not? Because I like the rooms. They've got a stereo imagery already done. Why don't I just kind of make it a little bit bigger and put the reverb on it? I've done this many, many times where somebody gives me a room mic, or even myself, where I've got a small room and the room mic isn't really cutting it. I just put a reverb plug-in directly on the room mic. I know, it's probably blasphemy. And he does crush his room mics, and there's a bit of a sound of the compression and also of the mic pre itself. I went to a default there. It's Studio B far, which is perfect. Now, this VLF is an interesting thing. Here's the blurb. It says, it's doing something other reverbs simply can't do. Specially designed to robustly support the low end in short reverbs without swamping longer tails. It grows and shrinks non-linearly with main reverb time in a totally unique way. So, let's see what that does in practice. As you heard me say earlier, I'm not a big fan of a lot of low end in any reverbs because I just think if you've got a low end which is already big and then you make it sustained longer in a room, let alone a reverb plugin, it just ends up with a lot of mud. So if this is saying it can do a better job of it, well, let's have a listen. So we're just going to hear this going through the plugin itself. A lot of low end. Oh, yeah. It's huge. So all the way down there, listen to the sustain of it. bring it up. That's great. Okay, so full drum kit in. Mute. Let's mute it again. Now let's play with the VLF now. Shorten it. That's nice. So much easier to hear in context, isn't it? It was nice how when it was super, super short and quiet. That's a nice balance. I'm getting just enough ambience on the low end. I'm loving this. Okay, so really quickly, we've managed to get really good, interesting drum sounds at work on that. So now I'm going to go straight to the vocal. So let's throw in the bass. Put in an acoustic. With no EQ. The acoustic definitely feels like it needs some high passing, but you know what? It is what it is. Put some piano in. Electric piano. Great. So don't forget, you can download these multi-tracks down below here so you can mess around with this yourself. So here is Chase's vocal.
Life is like a map. You will find your path, but sometimes you'll get lost.
And all I did to this was high pass it, do a slight high-end boost here, maybe do a bit of de-essing here and there, but I didn't want to get too mixy. I wanted to see what the plugin could do. Got an RVox and an R-Comp set to 50:1, just catching the peaks.
Life is like
Vocal chamber, 1.6 seconds. Let's sneak it in.
Life is like a map. You will find your path, but sometimes you'll get lost. Take some photographs, but don't look back. I'll meet you later on, but for now I'm gone.
Okay, it's pretty tasty. So let's listen to the vocal, now muted, but still sending to the reverb.
Life is like a map. You will find your path, but sometimes you'll get lost.
I'm going to go searching. So there's times.
Take some photographs.
That's the vocal chamber. Ambience.
Look back. I'll meet you later
Pulls.
on,
Plates. Okay.
but for now I'm gone.
That's a nice play.
Gone.
It's the fat plate.
Hide your memories
London plate.
away, save them for a rainy day. In a box beneath your bed.
Is that a Bowie 1971 plate? Hunky-dory kind of plate?
You feel too alone, scared away.
So Sun Plate C, is that Sun Studio or Sunset Sound? That's nice. So let's listen to a stripped down version of the track just so the reverb's a little bit more evident.
Life is like a map. You will find your
Cranking the verb.
path, but sometimes you'll get lost. And take some photographs, but don't look back. I'll meet you later on, but for now I'm gone.
I've reviewed a lot of reverbs. There's some I personally love a lot. some of the modern ones where they've got really intuitive kind of tools for shaping and stuff like that. But the thing that I loved about the analog world, and trust me, I love digital, love being able to solve problems and go, boop, boop, that bit's better here, put this here, boom, boom. So much easier. Overdubs, everything. Editing vocals, comping vocals, so much easier in digital. So you get the feeling. I love both worlds. The thing I loved about analog was the fact that you had big fat knobs on the front of anything you wanted to use, sometimes 2 to 3 knobs, not tons and tons of drop-down menus and all this kind of stuff. And lots of different units that we'd go through. There was always sounds that just worked straight away. So I know they do a more expensive version, and it's quite a lot more. And I'm excited to try it out. And I'm sure for those that are really super serious, getting incredibly unique sounds and doing your own thing, it's going to be absolutely amazing. But when it comes down to a $69 plugin, which sounds this good, this easily, this is pretty freaking awesome. I don't know how it's escaped me for so long.
Life is like a map. You will find your path, but sometimes you'll get lost.
So good.
And take some photographs. Don't look back.
We're just going to try other things as well. I don't want to keep freaking out about the one thing, but it's absolutely superb. Let's try large wooden.
Life is like a map. You will find your path, but sometimes you'll get lost.
I want to crank the pre-delay.
And take some photographs. Don't look back. I'll meet you later on.
Everything's just like of a super, super high quality. I'm not sitting there going, I need to pull out this frequency or do that. I mean, we've done zero mixing on the track itself beyond level balancing and that tiny bit of, high passing and compression on the vocal. Otherwise, it's just as it was printed. It's not picking up weird frequencies and amplifying them. It's really even. It's really beautiful. It's really intuitive. Like I said, it reminds me of the analog world where I just kind of went, I wonder what that sounds like. Oh, that's good. What about this one? That's better. When you're spending time trying to be creative or get the performances out of an artist, you want the tools around you to be really easy to use and sound good straight away. I haven't been this excited by a Reverb plugin in a while. This is something that keeps coming back because when I talk to friends of mine making records, they're like, you've got to try out this plugin. You've got to try out this plugin. You've got to try out this plugin. All right, let's keep listening. Ambience.
Life is like a map. You will find your path, but sometimes you'll get lost.
I'm having too much fun. I'm like, I like that one. I like this one. I like that one. Reverb, I feel like, is the most difficult thing I came to mix after getting low end done properly, getting drums to sit properly in a mix. When I first started mixing, it was always the only way I could get drums to sound good was to have fishtailing, to have the transients be too loud. And then I figured out how to get above that and actually get the drums to be powerful and full sounding without just making it all about the initial snap. I still get mixes these days from people, and the first critique that I make is just like, your drums only cut because you've got a really loud initial transient. You need to get the body in there. You need to kind of duck that transient in a bit and not just make it dep, 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 dep. And the second thing was getting the low end, getting the kick drum and the bass guitar and all the low end of the instruments to work together. But then, I don't know about you, but reverbs became this mystery of like, there's 10,000 different reverb plugins. There's all these different hardware emulations and stuff like that. I used to be like, which one is the one? And then I realized, as I started working with lots and lots of different mixers that would be mixing my productions and my engineering stuff, which are, Brower and Crystal Algae and Mark Ender and all these great mixers, I realized that they would have 2 or 3 hardware reverbs and then they would just blend them together for different sections. They weren't doing this. They weren't going over going, they were just like, I'd come in and it would be one setting they liked, another setting they liked, another setting. They'd have a short reverb, a long reverb, maybe a plate, maybe a slapback delay, maybe a long delay and a shorter delay. And that was it. They had these effects. And then they would just go, a bit more of this in this section, a bit less of that, whatever. They would just be rebalancing things. They weren't sitting there paging through tons and tons of stuff. So I look at this and I think to myself, clearly every reverb I'm listening to I like. I've only got a choice of 30. I can manipulate them all. I can use them in different sections and then just go, I want to use this here and this there. Let's take all of the backgrounds. So I've created a BV's bus, and then I'm going to send from this overall one to its own reverb. All right, so here's Sunset Chamber. I know Sunset Sounds Chambers really well, so let's see if it is.
But for now I'm gone.
Mute.
But for now I'm gone.
Back on.
But for now I'm gone.
Nice. Okay, let's take this to pre-fade so I can mute it, and we're just going to hear the chamber itself.
But for now I'm gone.
I'm going to bring this VLF up to see what the difference is before and after.
But for now I'm gone.
Turn it down. Nice, really, that's great control of the low end. I don't need any low end build up on that gone.
But for now I'm gone.
Blend it a little better.
But for now I'm gone.
It defaults to 100% wet, by the way, which is a must because I've seen many plugins that don't. They default to 50-50, and for those of us that automatically put our multi-effects onto individual buses or subgroups, it makes no sense whatsoever for that not to be set to 100%. And I've been caught out, and other people I've worked with have been caught out, and they put it on a separate bus, and then they get phasing issues because there's some delay compensation issues between that bus and then the live track. All right, let's have a listen to see where we're at now.
But for now I'm gone. Your memories away.
The way I would describe this reverb is classy. It's really classy. I can't hear any unwanted artifacts that it's giving, which I do hear in other plugins, and that's probably just because they're emulating maybe stuff that's quite different. But this is, of course, emulating the Bricasti, which is considered to be, I don't know, a flagship. Like I said, I use that word industry standard. I don't know if that's true or not. All I know is that if I name 10 really well-known mixers, they all have a Bricasti. So that's all I can say. It's definitely in the league of a 480. Whenever you would go into any studio, you'd see a 480 on the console. You still do in some studios. So this is fighting in that weight. It's competing against those classics, and it's a $69 plugin that's taking 30 of the best sounds available from the Bricasti and putting it into a plugin. It's a win-win. I think it's amazing. Like I say, it's a why not plugin for me. If you can afford it and you just know you're going to have a reverb that you can just lean on, and there it is, and it's going to be great. You're going to see it in a lot of my mixes. I'm just letting you know. I'm absolutely digging this. Thanks very, very much, LiquidSonics, for letting us try this out. So they've given us 5 to give away, so please look down below and you can win one of 5 of these. It's really absolutely superb. If you already use it, give us some of your tips. How do you use it? What do you use it on? I'd love to know. Thanks, everyone. So long. Farewell, à vous, and au revoir. Adios. Goodbye.